Joining us this morning is Dr. Adam Hamilwy and Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, a Democrat from New Jersey. Dr. Hamilwy was Representative Watson Coleman's guest at last night's State of the Union. He also returned from, I believe, your second trip to Gaza, your second recent trip to on a Gaza medical mission about 3 weeks ago. So I wanted to start by asking you, Dr. Hamilwy, just kind of what it was like to go from 3 weeks ago being, and I believe you were having a difficult time, as is common for medical professionals who go on missions to Gaza, getting back out. What it was like going from there and being kind of on the receiving end of U.S. power and the unpleasant end of U.S. power to being in the hall of that power. What was the experience like for you last night?
Well, last night was interesting. I mean, it was disappointing to kind of see um, our democracy being like in a situation where we are the pinnacle, basically, of we're supposed to be the leaders of this world. And I felt I was in a room filled with school children, and just a bunch of sycophants just clapping at everything that's to be said, whether it makes sense or not. I mean, there's a lot of things that are good and there's a lot of things that are bad. And if we can't discern between either one of them, then everything begins to fall apart. And it was very disappointing to see that.
And Congressman, can I get your kind of inside take a little bit on how Democrats decided that they were going to approach his speech? Was there did Al Green say in a meeting, you know what, I'm going to stand up and shake my cane and let him know, or
No.
like did leadership talk about protests? Like how did that sort out, and what was your thinking about
So
it?
yeah, so not in my presence did Al Green say that he was going to do what he did. Um, Leadership just wanted us to be respectful. That is our house, and to listen. Leadership knew that there would be some level of protest in some way, shape, or form. Asked that it not be terribly disruptive, and I think that, with the exception of the Al Green situation, which kind of got out of hand, but I certainly understand his emotion behind it. I think that things were put pretty orderly. We decided we were just going to sit quietly, listen. Some of us had signs that spoke to either fixing something like Medicaid or saying false, because the statement that the president was making rather frequently, actually, his statements were not accurate. But all in all, I think that given this moment, given the severity of the things that this administration has done and has proposed to do, I think Democrats did just fine.
Right. And Doctor, when you get written about occasionally in the press, sometimes for being unable to leave Gaza, you'll often be referred to as having kind of been the doctor that saved or worked on Senator Tammy Duckworth when she had her helicopter crash in Iraq. And I'm curious if you were able to speak with her all last night. Do you stay in pretty close touch with her? And has that given you the ability to speak more directly to members of Congress about what you've seen on the ground? And or does that just not matter now that Democrats are out of power and Trump is the one calling the shots?
I mean, I wasn't able to see her yesterday. I think I mean, I'm proud of what I did, and it's great that we have that relationship. But my ability really to speak with anyone with in Congress is their willingness to listen. So I've been back and forth here now many times over the last year, and I'll talk to anyone who'll sit down and have a conversation. So if they open their doors and they want to listen, whether they agree or not, I'll sit down and talk. And unfortunately, what I've been finding is that more and more doors are just closed. They don't want to even hear, and that's unfortunate because that's not how we're going to learn or change or move forward if we're not able to listen to each other.
What do you mean by the doors are closed? Like people are just they want to move past this entire
No,
situation? Like
they,
what's the
they, they don't want to listen to what I have to say. They
yeah.
don't want to listen to my experience. They don't want to hear another opinion or thought about what's happening in Gaza or Israel. So that
What is the difference under this quote unquote ceasefire, under which we've seen hundreds of people killed? But how would you describe the difference in your visit, your most recent mission, compared to the one while the hot war, so to speak, was on?
it was night and day. I mean, it was night and day. I went in about a week after the ceasefire started, and it was such a low bar to clear is to stop dropping bombs on everyone. Still there's a lot of destruction there. There's a lot of shortages. There's a lack of resources. There's no electricity. There's no clean water. So conditions are relatively horrible, but compared to last year, it was like the sun just finally like shone on the place. And it's unfortunate that now as we speak is that already Israel's breaking the ceasefire, and for the last 2 or 3 days there's been no humanitarian aid allowed to go in. And even since before this last 2 days, it's been even more difficult for doctors and nurses and healthcare workers to get into Israel and into Gaza to be able to provide that aid. They're making it more and more difficult. They're turning more people away, and they're giving even more restrictions. So this is, this has been ongoing now for the last 6 weeks, even to a higher degree than before.
And Israel had let in some additional supplies, medical and food and others, at the beginning of the quote unquote ceasefire. Did that have a noticeable impact on your working conditions in the hospital?
Yes, I mean there was food that came in. Prices dropped tremendously, like 10 times. Like, for example, like one of the nurses was showing me like a bag of tomatoes and said that this bag of tomatoes last week cost $50 US, and now it's five. And five is still a lot, but now it's at least affordable, and that's just food to be able to put on the table. So that aid that comes in is critical, and it affects our care. I mean, for people to be able to heal, they need to be able to eat and have
Hmm.
nutrition, and it's important. I mean, like people were literally starving. You could see people that have lost like 40 pounds, 50 pounds. You see their pictures and you can't recognize what they used to look like. And the children, they're just like, you could see the malnutrition everywhere you look. And now with Ramadan, it's even especially important because people are having just one meal a day, and I'm sure with these new restrictions, those prices just jump right back
Right.
up, and people again can't, even if there's food available, they can't buy what's on the market because the prices are so high.
Did you treat any Palestinian captives who were released as part of the exchange, and or what kind of patients were you seeing this time versus last time?
So I was not in a hospital that received the captives, but I did take care of a lot of patients that had backup, were backed up from the last year and a half. A lot of children that were born with congenital deformities, cleft lips and cleft palates over the last 2 years that hadn't received any care. A lot of the war injuries that people received from shrapnel, contractures, scarring, that needed revision surgeries to take care of. So it was more of a normal experience than what I had last year when it was just one trauma after the other. But still a tremendous amount of work that needed to be done.
And Representative Watson Coleman, when you see this, when you see Israel now breaking the ceasefire, is threatening, cutting off electricity, using starvation as a weapon to try to extract additional concessions beyond what was originally agreed to, and you see Trump talking about building Trump Riviera in Gaza, are you sensing any regret among your colleagues in Congress that they didn't do anything to stop this while they had the opportunity? And do they think it cost them politically? Like, in other words, do they care, or are they just moving past this?
One of the reasons that I wanted the doctor to come and be my guest is because with so many distractions, with all the sort of evil EOs and things like that Trump was putting out, and the Doge mess and the lies and all, and even the Ukraine stuff. All of a sudden, we weren't hearing anything after he talked about making Palestine, the Riviera of the Middle East, we weren't hearing anything, kind of doubled down on that, which is ridiculous. I thought it was really important to bring the doctor here again so that he could really talk about what's happening in real time there. I don't know what you mean when you say we could have made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously it wasn't, we weren't being assertive enough from my perspective to get Israel to back down at some point. Israel had a right to protect itself when this first went down, but we saw the kind of harshness that didn't seem to be necessary and didn't seem to move towards a two-state solution or a peaceful solution. So that was very disappointing to me. Do I wish we had done more in that regard? Yes. But it's a very complicated issue. We had very stubborn leadership there in Netanyahu, who didn't think he had to answer to anyone. And at the same time, I don't think that the United States was tough enough on him to make him sort of change course a bit and be more willing to meet and to create some pathway to safety and security. However, I don't believe that Hamas was legitimately willing to do that either. So I think that there was distraction and dishonesty on both parts.
Well, we've got to leave it there. We were going to talk a little bit longer, but just to let the viewers in on it. Democracy Now! Wanted to speak with you and Dr. Hamaway as well. And we, in independent media, we'd like to be a little more collaborative than competitive. So I want to let you go so you can get over. And we're happy to have you on again, and we can talk more at length about all of this. So thank you, Dr. Hamaway, and thank you, Dr. Watson Coleman.
Thank you.
Or Congresswoman Watson Coleman.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.